Let's make some cozy cabin socks. Hey machine knitters, I'm Danielle from loveyourknittingmachine.com and I am excited to bring this pattern to you today. It's a free pattern. You can get it. I'll leave a link in the description. These socks, just so you know, are not your normal everyday regular socks that you knit with sock yarn. These are thicker socks for winter. Sometimes they're called boot socks, cabin socks. There's different names for them. They're typically done with worsted weight yarn. Since it's so hard to get worsted weight yarn with nylon or with wool and polyamide, I'm just using wool today. But there are some yarns out there that you can find that are worsted weight. They're part wool and part polyamide or nylon. So, and that's what we typically look for in a sock yarn because we want it to stretch a little bit and give. So I'm doing this on a flatbed knitting machine so that you don't have to worry about having a ribber or adjusting things. So I'm going to be doing a 2x1 mock rib because I think that looks cute, and we're folding over the cuff. So I am casting on a 2x1 rib with 2 end stitches. So on each side of my bed I want an end stitch. So we are going to knit this sock. We're knitting from the top, the ribbing of the cuff, all the way down to the toe, and then we're going to knit back across the heel and back up to the top of the cuff. That's how this pattern is going to work. So you'll need some waste yarn. So we're casting on with waste yarn, and since I'm doing that, I can do that with an easy peasy cast on comb. So you cast on how you need to with waste yarn, and let's get going. Okay, I have some waste yarn on, and now I want to do a 2x1 rib. So I am going to start by knitting 1 row of my main yarn. We are going to do a 2x1 rib. I am going to start with my 3rd stitch, even though this is my end stitch and that will be in my seam. So I'm just pulling out every 3rd needle. This, now I have 2 end needles, and then these 2 will be next to each other, so they are my 2 knit in between my rib. So that's perfect, and now I'm going to transfer them, and it doesn't matter which way you transfer them. And then I'm going to make sure that I push those out of work. Okay, and then I can do my 2x1 rib. Make sure you have decent weight on your machine because ribbing likes weight. So we're just following the pattern and knitting how many rows it says. Make sure everything knits as you knit. Okay, heel of this stitch that we moved before, the one that's right next to our empty needle. So we're taking the heel of this stitch and transferring it to the right. And if you have trouble picking that up, right here, if you pull this needle back a little bit, it kind of opens up the stitch and it's a lot easier to grab that heel. So now we won't have any holes in our knitting. Okay, now we're going to knit 1 row. And we are going to pick up our stitches from the bottom. So I'm taking my weight off. This would be easier if I didn't have a ribber in my way. We're going to pick up all these stitches. So we're not picking up our waste yarn stitches. We are picking up our main yarn stitches. So make sure that you get every stitch, and the end ones are the hardest. So this is going over here. And then we're picking up all of these. Okay, now this is easier to knit if you pull all these out into holding position. Okay, now I'm going to hang some weights. we are knitting our stockinette stitch. There are different ways to knit a sock. And so for this one, we are going down the front, making a toe, then we're going back up, making our heel, and up to the cuff. And so we will have 2 seams along each side of our sock that we have to mattress stitch. So if you want to add any patterning, any fancy stitches, cabling, that's a fun addition to any sock. So we are now, it depends on how you look at it, but we are either at the front or we're at the back of our sock. So we're gonna do the front of our sock now, or the top of our sock. This will be as if the sock was like this, the heel is in the back. So we're gonna knit all the way down to our toe. The pattern says how long it's knitted for, but you can decide whether you take some rows away from here or if you add some rows. Let's reset our row counter. Okay, so now I'm knitting down to the toe, all in stockinette stitch.
You can see that there is some Fair Isle down below, and that will be shown in a second video.
Okay, now we're ready to make our toe. So we are going to short row, which means that you need to put your machine into holding position. This is how it works on my machine. And all that means is that when you pull out a needle, it will not knit. All these other ones will knit, and this one, the yarn will just go over top of. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to pull out a needle on the side of the carriage. So my carriage is on this side, so I pull out 1 needle, and then I knit 1 row. Now see, the yarn went over that, and it knit all the rest. Now the carriage is on this side, so we're going to pull out a needle into hold on this side. This is E position on your machine, also called holding position. We're going to knit a row. Now we have needles out on both sides, and we're just going to continue that pattern. And we're going to make sure that our end stitch is always knit. So we're going to pull out a needle and knit 1 row. Pull out a needle and knit 1 row. Now, when you get going, you may have to put a weight here because we're making a pocket. And that means we have some loose stitches. And the pattern will tell you how many stitches you need to pull out. So mine says I need to pull them out until I have 7 back here. 7 left. So this is my last one. And now we're going to go backwards. So when we go backwards, we have to wrap this needle over here, otherwise we will get a hole here in our toe. So we want to wrap on the side of the carriage and push a needle back on the side that's not on the carriage. And we're pushing this back into not exactly working position, but a position where the needle is going to knit. And so you just push it back until the latch touches, can you see that latch? Yep. Till the latch touches the yarn. Then we knit 1 row and make sure everything knits. This is usually the spot where I have to move my weights up. And you might need more weights. You might need 2 weights here. Just depends a little bit on your machine. So now I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to wrap this needle on the carriage side. So I'm just putting my yarn under the needle. And I'm going to push back a needle so that the latch touches the yarn on opposite the carriage. So wrap and push back. Wrap and push back. making sure that everything knits the way it's supposed to. Tug that down a little bit, wrap and push back. Now there's nothing to wrap on this side. We push back on the other side, and that's the end of our toe. So now I'm going to reset my row counter and knit how many rows my pattern tells me, and this will be the bottom of our sock from the toe to the heel. Okay, this is so exciting. We are just about finished. I got myself some tea so that I can finish without going crazy. Is this cup so adorable? Look, it has like yarn, and it says knitting keeps me from unraveling. Isn't that cute? Okay, so now you actually know how to do all the rest of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the heel, which is exactly the same as the toe. You don't have to do anything different. And then we're going to knit some straight. And then we're going, so it'll be the back of our leg that we're knitting. And then we have the mock rib at the end, and that can be a little bit tricky to pick up. Go ahead and keep watching and I'll show you how I do that. But this is super exciting. Socks are so much fun to do. So I hope you've enjoyed this so far. Okay, now I am on the opposite side of my machine as I was before, which is not a problem. We're still going to pull out our stitch that's closest to the carriage, and then we're going to knit across. Okay, then we pull out one needle on the other side, and we just keep going like that. So again, you're going to want a weight. One more. Whoops.
I pushed out too many needles, so I'm just going to push one back and put the stitch back on the needle.
Okay, then we push back one, we wrap the other side. Okay, then I'm going to reset my row counter and knit the rows for the back of my sock up to the mock rib, and then I'll show you what we're going to do for that. So this is, now I'm ready to do my mock rib. So I am going to change my tension dial to 1. And you change it to whatever your pattern says. So now we're doing the mock rib. I'm leaving a stitch on the end, and I'm doing 2 out of work, and then this will become an empty needle. So I have to, we're going to transfer to an adjacent needle. And I always go the same direction. Okay, so I'm going to push those out of work. I'm going to knit my rows, reset my row counter. Okay, now I'm going to take the heel of my stitch and transfer it to my open or empty needles. And I'm going to knit 1 row. Okay, and this is the tricky part. I'm going to take all my weights off because I'm going to lift this up and try to find the end of my ribbing. So here is where my ribbing starts, and so I'm just going to catch these stitches and put them on my needles. Okay, you can see here where you combine these two. So we actually want to go right below that because otherwise we don't have enough bumps. Okay, so this is, I need an end stitch. This is 2 stitches over. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. Sometimes it's easier to start a little bit in. Okay. So we have, sometimes people call these smiles and frowns. Here's a smile, here's a frown, because it's like upside down. We have a smile, so we want our next frown. Then we have a smile, and we want our next frown. Smile, frown. There's a smile, frown. So here's when I'm talking about a smile. Then we have this frown, smile, frown, smile, frown. Here's a smile and a frown. There's a smile. Here's a frown. Okay, so here's a smile. Just follow it right over. Here's our smile and our frown. Here's our smile, and I think this is our edge stitch, which is always hard to get. Okay, so now I'm going to pull those all the way out. Now this is the ribbing, so I'm just going to knit 1 row, and then I'm going to bind off. Okay, so when we begin our latch tool bind off, we want our hook pointing the same direction as our needles. So I'm going to pull that through the first one, and then I'm going to push it down below the latch and hook on to the next. And then I'm just going to do that all the way across. We're hooking on to the next needle, pushing back, catching our yarn, and pulling through. Hook to the needle, catch our yarn, pull through. Okay, now I'm at the end, so I'm going to just pull this through the last stitch, and I'm going to leave a nice long tail so that I can sew up the side of my sock, the seam of my sock, with at least one seam with this tail. So you can tighten that up and take it off, pull it tight, and let's see how everything looks. Looks like a skinny sock, but it won't. So there's our Fair Isle. Looks good. It should match up perfectly the other side. There's our heel and our toe. then I have a flaw in my yarn here, so I'll try to push that to the back. Then the Fair Isle on the other side, and our mock rib, which looks really good too. And you can see that this is a little springy. Regular ribbing would be more springy. And so we are just going to match that up like that. And we are going to match a stitch down the side. And so I have my yarn, my tail's coming from here. So I'm going to go up the inside, down the outside, and then I'll continue down my sock. Okay, when we do the mattress stitch, we want to make sure that nothing is twisted. So this is where I have my string coming off from when I did my my bind off here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these two together, and I'm going to go right up the side of our sock because we want this to go together like this. I'm going to start over here. When we do the mattress stitch, our whole goal is to be picking up these bars that are between everything. So I want to make sure that I'm over here where I want to be picking stuff up. Okay, so I'm just going across and then back over to the other side. Okay, so for the mattress stitch, you're going across to where you already came out. Okay, so this is where my string came out. And so I'm going to pick up 2 bars. And then we're going back to the other side. This is where my string is coming out. So on the stockinette side, I'm picking up 2 bars. Here we are on this side. See, I can see where my string came out from last time. So I just pick up 2 bars. Okay, and if you look, that's where my stitch came out. So we're going back up there. So you don't have to worry about pulling it too tight right away. But you will want to tighten it up eventually. You don't want to tighten it so that it puckers. It's easier to see it on this side. And see, you can see that looks pretty invisible. So, and I'm just going to keep going. Like I said, I'm going up, then back down, and then I'm going to start mattress stitching here. And you want to be on your stockinette side. So I'm on this side, so I'm going to move to the other side and look where this string that I just came out, and then I'm going to do the next 2 bars. And I pretty much always do 2 bars at a time. You can just do a 1. I haven't tried doing more, but if you have, let me know if it works. I hope you enjoyed this project, and make sure to give your knitting machine some love this week.